Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we are continuing our coverage of the Russia-Ukrainian War. Today is October 20th, and obviously the war continues. So first, in our analysis today, we're going to look at the western bank of the Dnieper River. Now, we are continuing to hear reports that Russia could possibly be making preparations for the evacuation of the western bank of its foothold on the Dnieper River. Well, why is that important? Well, if Russian forces withdraw, or for all intensive purposes, pushed out of the western bank of the Dnieper River, the area around Kherson and Kherson city specifically, the idea that the concept that the probability that Russian forces would regain control of this area on the western bank of the Dnieper River would be almost zero. The ability of the Russian military to conduct a new operation to push back across the Dnieper River would be very, very difficult for Russian forces if we were to see the evacuation of said Russian forces. If the Russian forces leave this area, again, the ability for Russian forces to mass and conduct river crossing operations across the Dnieper River outside of vertical envelopment operations with airborne and air assault forces would be very, very difficult for the Russian army. Specifically, the HIMARS, those multiple launch rocket systems that are incredibly accurate, would make it very, very difficult for Russian forces to mount such a large operation against a contested area across the Dnieper River. So again, we continue to hear about, at least from the Ukrainian side, that the Russians are making efforts for the possibility of withdrawing across the to the eastern bank of the Dnieper River. Now, has that happened yet? It has not. But again, I think that's going to be a decision that's going to weigh heavily in the Kremlin, in the political sphere, because again, if the Russian military, loses this footprint, again, incredibly difficult to damn near impossible for the Russian military, as operations set right now, to retake this area. And again, any concept of any possibility of a further operation by Russian forces, obviously towards other areas such as Kryvyi Rih or Odessa or Mykolaiv, would be completely written off at that point. I think it's safe to say that a Russian operation in the direction of Odessa at this point is something that is simply not going to happen this year. Could we do a reassessment 6 months from now? Could things change? Yes, absolutely. But as the situation sets, a move on Odessa is probably outside the realm of all possibilities at this point. We continue to see fighting taking place near Bakhmut as Russia continues offensive operations designed to seize control of this town. Heavy fighting continues as we speak, both to center, north, and south of Bakhmut. And then finally, the drone capability. It is very apparent right now that the drone systems that the Iranians have provided, the drone systems that the Russians are now mass producing in this conflict, are now starting to take a significant toll on Ukrainian forces. Again, we saw the Russians use drones throughout this conflict, but we're definitely seeing a uptick in the amount of drones that are being used. One, because of the production efforts underway in Russia with its own indigenous systems, but at the same time, the drone systems that are being provided by Iran are proving to be relatively effective. And again, from video accounts, from video reporting that we have obtained, and many of you have been able to see yourself, these drone attack efforts by the Russian military are definitely starting to degrade both the supply of the Ukrainian forces and the, more specifically, the air defense capability of Ukrainian forces. We have seen S-300s, among other systems, that are being targeted again and again by these long-range kamikaze drones that the Russians are now using en masse. We are seeing infrastructure being attacked, and we are seeing actual ground military targets being attacked as well. And we have at least one report in which a Ukrainian MiG-29, in its attempt to shoot down one of these drones, ran into the debris caused by the shoot down in one of these drones and ended up crashing itself. So could you say that one of these drones resulted in the takedown of a Ukrainian MiG-29? Possibly. But it happened. But again, these drones, as I had reported in a previous episodes by the Iranian military, are starting to prove very effective. Again, some of these drones, in all probability, trace their origins back to Israeli systems that were provided by Israel to China, and then the Iranians had the opportunity to have a look at some of these Chinese systems that the Chinese possessed, mainly the Harpy. And now we're seeing drones that look much like the Israeli Harpy being used by Iranian forces, and now by proxy by Russian forces. And in all probability, I have no doubt that the Russians will begin to reverse engineer and manufacture a larger version of what looks to be an Israeli Harpy by Russian forces. But that's where we set for today. We're continuing to watch what's happening very closely on the Kherson footprint. Again, a very, very key struggle in this war, and could have some lasting ramifications if Russian forces actually withdraw from this area. So very, very interesting to continue to watch. Anyway, that's what we have for today. Thanks for joining us. As always, more to come very, very soon, and have a good day.